Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Davidson, the sexual integrity coach located in Wilton Manors, Florida. Welcome to another episode of Adult Sex Education. Narcissism has become a popular term in American culture, and for some very good reasons. Research demonstrates that narcissistic attitudes and behaviors are increasing in Western culture. The population as a whole is more narcissistic today than 50 years ago. But today I'm going to talk specifically about narcissism among gay men and its contribution to the challenges gay men face developing a supportive community and finding long-term relationships. First, let me explain how narcissism is different from healthy self-esteem. Self-esteem is the attitude one has about their own value. It's how a person feels about themselves, their self-image, their self-perception. Self-esteem is influenced by multiple factors, including personal achievements, relationships, societal standards, and internal beliefs. Liking yourself is a good thing, and it doesn't preclude one's ability to be respectful and kind to others. Narcissism, however, is not a product of good self-esteem. It's an exaggerated, grandiose sense of one's importance. Narcissists have a sense of entitlement that causes them to exploit and manipulate others. They have a diminished capacity for empathy that causes them to treat others with disrespect and prevents them from being able to celebrate others' achievements. They need a high level of praise and adoration and are often preoccupied with creating an image of beauty, power, and importance. Research concludes that gay men generally have lower levels of self-esteem and higher levels of narcissism than their straight male brothers. Someone with good self-esteem believes they have the same rights as others and values everyone being treated fairly and with respect. They have a realistic perspective of their strengths and weaknesses. They recognize their limitations, but they also feel proud of their accomplishments. We sometimes refer to this as healthy narcissism because the individual is appropriately advocating for their own interest and being assertive at getting what they want. But their expectations are reasonably aligned with their merit and are not at the expense and harm of someone else. The classic narcissist believes they are entitled to special privileges based on their exaggerated sense of superiority. They will treat others poorly if they believe they have nothing to gain from being kind to them. Their relationships tend to be superficial and self-serving. They can bond and form attachments with others, but these attachments can be easily dissolved if the other person disagrees with them or calls into question the narcissist's grandiose perception of their own importance. You might imagine narcissism on a spectrum or scale from low to high. Those on the extreme high end are those who would meet criteria for the American Psychiatric Association's classification of narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissism is a personality trait that most of us possess to some degree. With proper socialization, we learn to keep our narcissistic thoughts in check and hold ourselves accountable for how we treat others. Those meeting diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder can be very toxic and destructive if or when they are held accountable for their bad behavior. Ironically, these individuals often do find their way into positions of power and authority because they are masters of manipulation and intimidation. Superficially, they can be charismatic and charming. Those closest to them know how dark these individuals can become if they don't get their way. They have no qualms about exploiting others to maneuver their way up the ladder in business, religious leadership, and politics. So why do we see such a high prevalence of narcissism among gay men? In general, it's believed there are multiple factors that can influence the development of a narcissistic personality. While some mental health professionals blame narcissism completely on environment, others maintain that it can be a combination of environment and genetics. Narcissism can also be learned by children who grow up with a narcissistic parent who models narcissistic behaviors and attitudes. Environmentally, two extreme patterns of child rearing seem to produce narcissistic traits. In one extreme, the parent overindulges the child, pampers him, and exaggerates his value and competency in a way that doesn't match the child's experience of himself and certainly not his relationships with others. At home, the child is praised, celebrated, and family life centers around his wishes and desires. When he doesn't receive this same treatment from peers and teachers at school, he believes he's being denied the adoration he deserves, and he behaves in ways that are manipulative and retaliatory. The other extreme is the child who is consistently criticized, bullied, or emotionally neglected. Nothing he can do is ever good enough. He can never meet the expectations of those around him. His talents and strengths will never be acknowledged to the same degree as those of his siblings and peers. This is most often the factor influencing the narcissistic personality development of the gay male youth. Research suggests that it might be an adaptive response to survival in social systems where gay men experience high levels of social exclusion. In cultures where boys don't easily conform to gender role expectations, those boys experience intense levels of shame. They are emotionally neglected, loved conditionally, and shamed for their unique expressions of individuality. Today, gay children might be more tolerated, but they still know they are not preferred. Exaggerating one's own sense of worth is an adaptive means of balancing the inferiority one experiences everywhere else in life. His voice has to be louder, his presence bolder, his attitude more self-serving, or he will never get acknowledged otherwise for his true strengths and talents. This solo self-promotion is his adaptive means of keeping himself at the front of the line. Adaptive as it might be, it comes with consequences. The respect he will earn from others is fleeting and superficial at best. This only reinforces his distrust of others and causes him to feel an even greater sense of isolation and loneliness. Every time he alienates another person with his behavior, he proves again that no one can ever give him the adoration he deserves. The narcissistic mindset becomes even more entrenched. Unfortunately, gay culture tends to reinforce narcissism. The overemphasis on appearance, youth, and materialism in conjunction with excessive celebrations, pageants, and party culture promotes the belief that these are the things that matter most in order for gay men to find respect among their peers and perhaps even love from a significant other. Those who don't share these priorities often feel excluded from their own gay community and can withdraw into the shadows. Sadly, this withdrawal increases with age at a time when they may need community more than ever. Though narcissism isn't a virtuous quality, their grandstanding performances likely keep them on the invitation list and in the clique. Many gay men report that they fear aging because they know the loss of youth and beauty can mean social isolation and exclusion by their own tribe. In their youth, they witnessed older gay men being devalued and disrespected. In middle age, they might inject themselves with Botox, Trimex, steroids, and hormones, trying to preserve an illusion of vitality instead of gracefully surrendering youth and embracing the wisdom that comes with age. Emotional development is often arrested in gay men during adolescence because the cultural rituals of socialization during this time center around activities that enhance heterosexual coupling. The high school prom, the homecoming dance, crowning of the high school king and queen, etc., all foster psychosexual development that is gender binary and heterosexually oriented, to the exclusion of those who do not or cannot conform. The emotional trauma of being abandoned by your peers creates a narcissistic injury from which a young gay man might spend his lifetime trying to recover. In adulthood, he compensates with an insatiable pursuit of sexual encounters, trying to validate his own desirability. He excludes others he judges as unworthy of his time, just as he was excluded at this developmentally critical time in his life. He demands the attention that was once withheld and reserved only for those who conformed to cultural ideals of masculinity. He pursues the ultimate body they never had, as he models his jockstrap like a high school athlete well into his 50s and beyond, attempting to heal the wounds left from this critical time in his adolescent development. Straight men have the advantage of being in relationships with women, and women are naturally better at growing community and fostering nurturing relationships. Straight men are more likely to enter into fatherhood, which can shift his focus from himself onto his children and family. Therefore, community is already built in for him. Just as in high school, he still walks the preferred path. Straight men can be narcissists too, but it isn't a direct result of their sexual orientation, and it isn't celebrated by their culture as it is for their gay brothers. The narcissistic gay male likely doesn't have children, and therefore he has more disposable income to indulge his desire for adventure and material possessions that will support his image. It will be difficult for him to maintain lasting relationships because there's little room in his life for the needs and desires of someone else. If he chooses a partner, it will likely be someone who allows him the spotlight or willingly plays a supporting role in his autobiography highlighting his successes. He will need a gimmick to stay relevant because younger and prettier gays are coming out every day. His social support system is precariously balanced, ready to redirect their worship to the next man who can win their attention. It's not my intention to be critical and judgmental of gay men as a whole. After all, this is my community too, and I have to be mindful of my own shadow from narcissistic wounding that occurred earlier in my life. It's important to remember that no one aspires to grow up and become a narcissist. The childhood conditions that create this personality foundation are beyond the individual's control. However, once we reach adulthood, we have to get this in check if we are ever to be successful at achieving emotional intimacy with others. Narcissism is hard to overcome because it requires self-examination and accountability. Narcissists lack these virtues. Those meeting criteria for narcissistic personality disorder often don't get treatment, and they're not very good candidates for psychotherapy anyway because they're not good at introspection. This might seem odd, but one thing narcissists need most is true self-acceptance because they struggle with feelings of insecurity and vulnerability. They need to give themselves permission for imperfection and learn to tolerate their weaknesses and limitations. Becoming more authentic instead of hiding behind a false facade will help them develop more intimate relationships and emotional connection with others. They need to recognize their own judgment of others and how this ultimately limits their opportunities for validation and respect. I'm Dr. Stephen Davidson, the Sexual Integrity Coach. I hope you will like this video and subscribe to my channel. Please check out my website at sexualintegritycoach.com. There you'll find links to both of my books, Peaceful Mind, Peaceful Life, the Guidebook to Happiness, as well as Sexual Integrity, Finding the Courage to Be Yourself.